Welcome to Refined Resilience. I'm your host, Carrie Hill, and on this podcast, we highlight the small moments that shape our journey toward greatness and remind us that resilience isn't linear. Each episode features stories of perseverance and the little victories that often go unnoticed, illustrating that resilience is about finding strength in everyday life. Well, hello, everyone. I am thrilled to bring to you today's guest, my friend, Chris Yadon. Hi, Chris.
Hey.
How are you?
Good to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. I'm just going to read all about you because you're so impressive. I can't remember all the things that you are.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chris, but he is a very impressive person. And I asked him to come on today because of his role as the executive director of Saprea. And he has been in that role since 2015. He is responsible for the executive leadership, effective stewardship of financial resources, planning, and operational management at Saprea.org. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the organization is. He's previously held leadership positions in the startup, tech, and healthcare industries. He brings a valuable skill set to the organization and is deeply committed to addressing the epidemic, and it is an epidemic, of child sexual abuse. Chris plays an important role as a spokesperson for Saprea. He is a sought-after speaker, and he's been invited to present nationally and internationally. His expertise centers on heightening awareness to the epidemic of child sexual abuse, as well as educating the public on best practices for prevention and the healing services available to survivors. Chris has also been featured across several media platforms where he's often requested to contribute as an industry thought leader and expert. He considers his family to be his greatest accomplishment. He is the grateful father of 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, and he has 2 grandchildren. One is here and one is on the way. And he and his wife, Christy, have been married now for 28 years. Wow. Chris, hi.
Hey, it's good to be here.
It's so good to see you.
Good
it's been a hot minute since we've spent some time together. So I think the last time we were on KUTV2.
Yeah,
maybe it was like the last time we were physically together. So it's lovely to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
So this is an impressive space that you're in. You are an impressive person. And anybody that takes on the role of advocate for child sexual abuse awareness has to be an incredibly strong person because the information can be overwhelming. The reality of the circumstances can be overwhelming. So, for you, Chris, I would love to hear how you got into this space.
Sure. Yeah, it actually starts close to here where we are physically.
Okay.
I grew up here in Orem
where
we're recording.
Awesome.
So I grew up right next to a cherry orchard. My grandfather was a fruit farmer and I loved spending time out in the orchard. It was idealistic in so many ways. I could kind of trunch around however I wanted, whenever I wanted, spent a long time riding on the wheel well of Grandpa's tractor, playing in the irrigation ditches. I mean,
like we did before social media and phones.
Yeah. If I can just kind of paint this picture
I love it.
Of a bare-chested little 7-8-year-old without shoes on, tromping around in an orchard.
It's your Huckleberry Finn moment.
That's what was going on, right?
Yeah, awesome.
Orem at that time was pretty small, pretty rural, lots of farming, particularly fruit farming. So I grew up in that environment, and I remember as I kind of came into my teenage years, there were some challenges in our family, and maybe we'll share a little bit about that later. But overall, I felt like I was living a pretty idealistic childhood. It wasn't until I was a young adult that I started to learn about some of the more horrific things that were going on in our community, that had impacted my family. And one of them was child sexual abuse. It had impacted people I love very much. And as I got married, learned from extended family, in-laws of those that had experienced child sexual abuse. And I remember that idealistic childhood vision kind of shattering. Like the growing up I thought I had. Yeah. Maybe I came out unscathed. Right. That's another story.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
but the 20 something year old me was like, maybe I came out unscathed, but those I loved didn't. Yeah. And I was not okay with that. And I remember feeling really, really angry. Angry that, people had been abused. Angry that Those who were charged to deal with it didn't have the tools and resources to deal with it in a healthy way. And in many ways, it got shoved under the rug. And angry that as a society, we said, oh, this is too sensitive, too taboo to talk about. And as it goes with many of us, anger is a very powerful emotion. And when it gets channeled, it turns into activism. And when I came out of my for-profit career, the right opportunity came along for me to apply that activism in preventing child sexual abuse and in helping people heal from it. And that's how I got involved.
I really love what you just said, Chris, that when your anger gets, is activated into the right channel, right? When it goes into the right channel, then it becomes activated. What is the process of somebody moving from anger to a channel that is productive? Like, what does that look like for people?
It starts, I've become a student of emotion. And maybe we can get into this if we go there. But, in my childhood, particularly as a tween into teen years, I actually started to numb my emotions to where I wouldn't feel a lot of emotion, particularly those that we associate as negative. I don't like the word negative emotions. I think all emotions have their purpose. And so when it comes to an emotion like anger, I've had to become a student of how to even feel the emotion. And to be okay with the emotion. And that's really part of the answer to your question is Dr. Siegel, who's an expert in parenting, he uses a phrase called name it to tame it. And when it comes to our emotions, there's not a more succinct way to say, how do you channel these hard emotions? First, you have to acknowledge it. You have to name it. If you're going to tame it, you have to name it. You have to say, oh, that's anger. I'm feeling anger. And recognize its benefits and its drawbacks, because then you're empowered to choose how you're going to deal with it, which is a big part of being a resilient person. When you feel that emotion, the emotion's neutral, not neutral in how it makes you feel, but it's neutral. It doesn't turn into action. How you cope with the emotion, or maybe as you advance more, how you manage the emotion is what determines what you do with it. So learning to acknowledge it, name it, learning to let go of any negative connotation about an emotion like anger, like I shouldn't be feeling this, and then learning how to manage it. Those are kind of the 3 steps on how you channel it.
I really appreciate that you just said, like, I shouldn't be feeling, we should and shouldn't ourselves all the time,
we do.
Right? And so when you're making peace, I guess, with the experience of human life, you do have to kind of be a neutral space for those emotions to flow through you. And I really appreciate that can be an igniter for really productive and proactive, advocacy work. So I really appreciate that. So for you, Chris, you said, I came out unscathed, but really you didn't, right? Not only because the other people's experiences around you touched you and you had a response to their experiences, but also because you yourself had some experiences too, within your own environment. And so I'm just curious if you would share a little bit about like your personal experiences with abuse.
Yeah. So in my home, I had 3 older siblings, and then my parents, and then 2 younger siblings. So I was number 4. And my oldest sibling had some real challenges through his teenage years. And, that's his story to tell. I'm not going to get into those details. And really in their own way, each of my siblings had their challenges. So I observed what was happening there. Some of the dynamics happening, particularly between my father and those kids. There was also a lot of challenges in my parents' marriage. Again, their story to tell the details, but it wasn't healthy.
Right.
I'll just leave it at that. And it was very clear to me as a tween that my parents' marriage wasn't healthy. They likely were going to get divorced at some point. There were abusive things going on. And I responded, not on purpose. I didn't consciously choose this. I responded by numbing. So it's actually a very common response. It's well researched that those that go through any type of traumatic experience, one of the major coping mechanisms is to numb our emotions. And numbing your emotions in the near term is actually very healthy and protective. It's a healthy coping mechanism.
Yeah.
We're designed to do that. Our brains and bodies, our nervous systems are designed to do it. But over the long run, it becomes maladaptive and actually becomes unhealthy and problematic. And so I started to numb, not knowing that I was numbing. And what happened is I kind of went through my teenage years. I was now in adulthood. I had gotten married, and I found myself at my grandfather's funeral, sitting in the pew. And I was sitting there, and I wanted so bad to feel sad, and I couldn't. I was close to my grandpa. He was, I was out in the orchard with him. He was that hero person in my life. He was stability, so many good things, right? His smile, his laughter, just everything was rich to me. So I wanted so bad to just feel sad, and I couldn't. And that was the first time. It wasn't the first time my wife told me I was numb, but it was the first time I recognized like, oh, something's wrong here. And that is when my journey to learn to feel again began. So you have the journey of the numbing, then you have the journey of the recognizing and eventual healing.
Yeah. Explain what it feels like to numb, Chris, because I think just using the terminology is like, we understand you're putting a Band-Aid over that space, but what is the experience of just being numb because of trauma?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, before I get into a few of the signs, is the concept of too much or excessive, because each of the things I'm going to tell you are actually helpful until they become harmful.
Yeah.
So each of these items in excess is what it feels like to be numb, but in moderation can actually be helpful. So some of the most common signs are, one of them is suppressing our emotional expressions. There's one of my favorite moments, maybe it's because I identify with it, I don't know, but one of my favorite moments in all of animated movies comes from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. And Earl, the police officer in that movie, he comes into this environment, and they're kind of mimicking Jurassic Park, where if you know the movie, the food is taken on all these characters, right? And he makes, they're kind of sitting there in that moment of awe. Yeah. And he says, wow, it's enough to make a grown man cry. Yeah. But not this man. He has a little tear coming out, and he sucks it back in his eye. Yeah. Right. So that would be one sign that you might be numbing. If you are suppressing emotions in environments that are safe to express emotion, that's a sign of numbing. So it's actually really healthy to be able to suppress emotions in unsafe environments. They protect us. Right. But if I can't cry at my grandfather's funeral, right, it's like, okay, something's wrong there, right? I'll give you maybe one or two others. So another one is avoidance behaviors. One of the most common for trauma survivors is hyperproductivity. And a lot of survivors are very, very of trauma of all kinds, including sexual abuse, are very, very accomplished. Because they are so productive. Because if they're productive, guess what? They don't have to sit with the emotions, sit with the thoughts, right? So they use it as a coping mechanism. And without taking away their accomplishments, because we should celebrate their accomplishments and their resilience. Sure. We have to acknowledge that hyperproductivity can become maladaptive. And so you'll see survivors that become so hyperproductive that they not only burn themselves out, but they burn out everybody around them. So that would be another example of a sign that I'm numbing. I think what I'd leave you with your question, we could share others if we had time, but is recognizing emotional numbing is not easy.
Yeah.
And so having a few signs to kind of ask yourself and be curious about these signs to say, hey, is that me?
Yeah.
Is one of the best ways to recognize that I might be numbing.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's not a common question. We don't ask, how do people numb? Yeah. And so I really appreciate the insight, especially as it relates to, generations of people that are dealing with abuse, right? Cyclical and ongoing generational abuse. I think understanding the cycle and what happens in the cycle, and when we sometimes go into these numbing spaces, how we're not actually addressing the cycle itself. We're putting, again, that Band-Aid on top of it and saying, okay, I can do this because I don't have to feel it. Right. And I don't know that we introduced Saprea, the mission of Saprea, Chris. Sure. So that would be really important for the context of what we're talking about. Yeah. So I would love, I had the privilege of working with you and your team for a while, and I love the mission of Saprea, and I appreciate you and the work that you're doing. So in your words, I'd love for you to just, share with us what that is.
It's pretty simple. At Saprea, we bust our tails every day to liberate individuals and society from child sexual abuse and its lasting impacts. And, you can say those little kind of catchphrasey words, but there's actually a lot of rich meaning in that simple statement. When we talk about liberating, we have to recognize that trauma symptoms, they do take us captive. Yeah. When we have trauma itself it's never great, but it's not really what the problem is. It's unresolved trauma that's the issue. Yeah. And so when we have unresolved trauma that kind of takes us captive and controls our day-to-day life, it takes a very heavy toll on individuals, on relationships, on workplaces, anywhere humans exist. It takes a toll. So when we say we're liberating individuals, it's about providing healing services for survivors of child sexual abuse. When we talk about liberating society, what we're talking about is stopping some of the cyclical nature through prevention work, empowering parents to reduce risk for their kids, helping survivors heal so they don't continue some of those cycles into future generations. So when we talk about liberating individuals in society, there's a lot to that. And we say of child sexual abuse and its lasting impacts. And child sexual abuse, like any trauma that happens, if it goes unresolved, unaddressed, has devastating lasting impacts. And some of the most common with sexual abuse, there's high corollaries between sexual abuse and incarceration, sexual abuse and substance use, sexual abuse and eating disorders, sexual abuse and suicide. So a lot of these secondary issues we deal with in society that we talk about, they're actually rooted in childhood trauma, with child sexual abuse being one of the big ones.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because what I've always been impressed with in Saprea's model is that it is focused on, yes, let's address the root. It's not focused on let's stay in the root, right? It's like, let's look at it, let's understand it, and then let's find a pathway forward. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about the curriculum that you do provide, the resources that you do provide at Saprea for women to have a pathway to resilience. And after that, I would love to hear about some of the outcomes, Yeah, so core to how we approach our services is this premise that we believe survivors are strong human beings. They haven't gotten through what they've gotten through without being very, very strong. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And they may be dealing with these impacts, and we may look at that and say they're not resilient. It's actually quite the opposite. Totally. I agree. Right? When you look at the word resilient, there's a couple of major definitions. One of them's how far you bounce back from a setback. Their setback, if it's this deep, if it's really deep, and they only bounce back
3/4 of the way, that bounce back's a lot more than someone that has a minor setback.
Agreed.
So very resilient people. And we believe in them, and we believe they can become stewards of their own healing. Because of that, our services focus on the later stage of healing, which we don't do the crisis intervention. It's, hey, I'm now ready to work on my lasting impacts.
Right.
Those are post-traumatic stress symptoms most commonly. So we do programming that focuses on that stage of healing, but it's all about empowering the survivor to take control of their healing journey and not be dependent on a particular program or service to continue to heal.
Yeah.
So we do that through in-person retreats. They're 4 days in person, followed by 9 weeks of learning afterwards. We do it through online healing services that are organized by 17 symptoms. So a survivor can go, I'm dealing with flashbacks. How do I manage that? Or I'm dealing with shame. How do I deal with that? We do it through support groups. So I love Dr. Betsy Kanarowski, our chief clinical officer. I love her saying that trauma happens in isolation, but healing happens in community.
Yeah, I love that statement.
Right?
Yeah.
So we promote that through really, really good support group curriculum where survivors can come together with other survivors and engage in healing. And then we do a half-day healing workshops or webinars that are kind of that kickstart introductory method to healing, but each of these are designed to set that survivor on that path.
Yeah, that's amazing.
To being a steward of their own healing.
Well, and when they come into it, they're ready for it, right? It's like they've gotten up to a place where they know that they need something different. What they're doing, the numbing, whatever else is there is not working anymore, right? So, but I agree with you. I think that this specific demographic of humans are some of the most strong, beautiful, powerful souls, and the most empathetic and the most compassionate. And from my experience working with the team at Saprea, just hearing the women's stories that have been through the retreats, that have used the resources, it's just so inspiring, Chris. I mean, it's just so inspiring what you guys are doing and also for them. And I really love it because what I think something unique to Saprea is that you are also niching into specific demographics, like specific populations. Yeah. I know last year there was a big focus on like the Spanish, healing webinars, and the impact that was having in those Spanish communities was just starting to burn a little bit, So for those of you who are listening that aren't familiar with all of the features that Saprea offers, please go to saprea.org and look at their resources. And if you are in a community that culturally, which I just find this fascinating, culturally, child sexual abuse can be an accepted practice. And to me, I always thought that was so interesting. You're not just talking about healing child sexual abuse. You're talking about changing an entire culture sometimes. Yeah. And so I'd love to hear from your perspective, Chris, what works, when you're in that situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a few things I personally have developed expertise in. One is my own journey with numbing, and that one's very applicable to survivors, right?
Sure, yeah.
I'm not a survivor of sexual abuse. I numbed for other reasons.
Right.
Other traumatic experiences.
I mean, you have 6 kids,
right? So. Right. So that, but another place where I have expertise is what's referred to as social movement theory, which is under the umbrella of societal change. So how do we change big issues? Right. How do we change social norms? Yeah. And that's exactly what we're attempting to do right now with child sexual abuse. And your listeners will have noticed over the last several years a significant change in how frequently they're hearing about child sexual abuse. I won't say people are comfortable talking about it yet, but they're more comfortable about it today than they were 10 years ago. That's not just Saprea. That's the broader movement. Sure. That's that movement I'm talking about of changing societal norms. Yeah. So let's take the state we're in right now as an example. In the state of Utah, we do market research. And through that market research with our partners at Boulder Way Forward and Utah Women in Leadership Project, we learn how Utahns perceive the issue of child sexual abuse. And the majority of Utahns, here's 2 perceptions that are really interesting. The majority of Utahns do not believe child sexual abuse is preventable. And they do not believe it's an issue in their immediate community. All the other data says otherwise, right?
Yeah.
But that's how people perceive it. So it's like, okay, Utahns believe child sexual abuse is horrific, but why aren't they taking action? Well, we've got a million problems to solve. And if I don't believe a problem is solvable or that it's happening in my community, I'm probably not going to give it the energy it needs. So that's something we're specifically working on in our state right now.
Yeah.
And there's principles, like one of the principles is create proximity. People don't solve problems until they feel proximate to them.
Yeah.
So that goes right to that perception around community.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of work to help Utahns understand how proximate the issue is to them. It's their sister, it's their brother, it's their neighbor. And
maybe it was their dad right. Yeah.
Right. And as survivors, and this is where survivor-led prevention becomes so powerful, as survivors are prepared and ready to share their stories, it's magical what happens.
Yeah.
It creates that proximity and perceptions change immediately.
Yeah.
We saw that one of the best examples we've seen in recent history is with breast cancer. When I was a little kid, people didn't even say cancer, let alone breast cancer. Now, it's like, how many people do you know that have been through breast cancer? How many people I don't know, right?
I'm trying to think of the first time that I even heard the word cancer, and I was probably 13.
Yeah.
You know, like, you're right. Yeah. Like, we just didn't, it just wasn't talked about.
It was taboo.
You know? Yeah,
right?
completely.
Much the way sexual abuse is right now. It's taboo. Yeah. But because breast cancer survivors were willing to share their stories, it made the issue proximate to all Americans. All Americans.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how you see a big shift. Well, it's one of the methods we use to make shifts. So we're leaning in heavily to that right now with the issue of child sexual abuse to make that shift.
I really love that this is your background. It's always been so fascinating to understand how societies become resilient in specific demographics, you know, and I think I'm really fascinated by that, especially right now with the kind of climate that we're going through and so many different changes regarding policies in so many different places. You know, how do we become resilient as a society in so many of these ways where no matter what is happening on the external, the internal problems of our state and our people and our families are still prevalent and they still have to be attended to. And so I think I've always loved the, the aspect of proximity and how you position that with people. And I think it's brilliant. Chris, talk to me about what the child sexual abuse rates are in Utah right now.
Yeah. So in Utah, it's 1 in 7 children would be sexually abused by age 18.
Gosh.
And those studies are largely based on reporting where touch has been involved. When you start looking at the other types of child sexual abuse, and these types are growing where physical touch is involved. So an example might be sextortion, where a child's being extorted for money or for images, sexual images. The rates are higher. It's hard to put our finger exactly on where those rates land with everything else involved. We have some good national data, but not as the data in Utah is not as good on the other part. But so whether it's 1 in 7, 1 in 10, 1 in 3, it is one too many.
That's right.
I mean, and anywhere even in that spectrum is epidemic. And sometimes people hear that stat, less so now than it used to be, but it still comes up. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people go, really?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And proximity again solves this problem. Right. So back to that principle is what they're saying is, I don't know any survivors around me. There's no way it could be 1 in 7. The reality is they do know them. They're just, the survivors around them just aren't talking to them. And when survivors start sharing their experiences and start talking about it when they're ready, right? We don't want to pressure them.
Sure.
From an ethical perspective, it's on their timing, their timeline, right? When they're ready, if they want to do it at all, right? But when they start sharing those stories, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, like as many conversations I've had of really, is that really the stat? I've had just as many where people have come back a couple months later and said, you know, I've started talking about this issue with people around me. I had no idea how many people I know and love that are close to me that have been impacted.
Well, and you know that because of your own experience.
That's part of my story that even got me involved.
Yeah. And I think part of that is, yes, it's uncomfortable to talk about, and nobody wants to look at the ugly, right? Yeah. We've got other things going on in our lives. Like we can't deal with that, right? Whatever it is, Chris. But I think in Utah specifically, because it's so family oriented, because everyone is so close. When I lived in, circle back to that thought, but when I lived, I didn't grow up in Utah, and so my community by and large was always whoever was on the army base, sure. While I moved around. But I remember thinking, when I moved to Utah, how every Sunday is packed with family. Every Sunday, there's not like this sense of friends or outside support that you can really talk to who's not connected to your family.
Sure.
And so I'm interested in maybe what the research has said or what you have found to be the case with people just feeling like there's no place for them to talk to about it and still keep the family dynamics safe, especially because of the culture that we are in the state of Utah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that.
So this is one of those areas where two things can be true. Having rich stability built in family is a huge asset for our state.
Oh, for sure.
There are so many blessings and benefits.
Yeah.
But it also comes with some challenges.
Yeah.
And particularly when the abuse is happening inside the family.
Yeah.
It makes child sexual abuse particularly difficult. Because of this, in terms of the research, I'll just share a few things.
Yeah.
About somewhere between 60 and 70% of survivors don't even disclose that if they disclose at all, they don't disclose until they're adults.
Yeah.
Right. So the kids aren't disclosing, and there's lots of reasons for that. Threats, not understanding what's even happening. Right. There's lots for that. But when they do disclose as adults, that disclosure process is usually evolutionary. It's not like, I'm going to come disclose today.
Right. Yeah. It's like incremental. Right?
Yeah. It's incremental. Yeah. So survivors will test a little bit about that disclosure to see if the environment's safe. Maybe that's with a sibling. Maybe that's with a parent. Maybe that's with a friend. Where things get really tricky and sticky is when survivors have to also grapple with another thing where two things can be true that is hard. And that is, there are many survivors who genuinely love the person that abused them. And sometimes people hear that and say, well, no, they can't really love. No, they actually love them. Yeah. They can and they do. And that doesn't give that person an out. It doesn't excuse it, right? Yeah. So they've got to deal with that and then deal with the reality of what disclosing the abuse within that family is going to do to the person they love. And it just drives a lot of survivors into silence or into really limited conversations, maybe with a trusted friend, to your point about where else it might happen, maybe a coworker. The key for us is to learn, and we actually have resources for this at saprea.org, is to learn how to be better receivers of those disclosures. To learn that we always believe first. We don't challenge, we don't question. We keep the survivor in control of their story and in control of how we respond to their story in many ways. Like, if you were disclosing to me, I would clearly say to you or make a statement about believing you. And then I would open it to questions, not questions to dig and find out more, but, thank you for telling me, what can I do to support you? How can I help? I'm so grateful you trusted that with me, right? Yeah. There's so many little things that we can do to be better recipients of those disclosures that help create better environments where survivors can disclose, especially when they're facing some of those complex things within families.
Well, and I think the shame of even just stating that someone that you do love did this thing to you, right? And so now you have to grapple with the thing that was done, but also with the fact that, to your point, I need to tell someone this was pain, this hurt, this was painful, I'm in pain, you know, because of that. And I think, to your point, I appreciate that you said we have to become better receivers, because I think oftentimes we're more often than not, we're not, you know, we don't pay attention a lot when young people tell us things like this, you know, we kind of brush it off because maybe it's uncomfortable and we don't really want to go there, or we don't understand it, or for whatever reason, Chris. But I love that Saprea's model is receive first, right? Question after and receive first, because I would much rather know the truth of that situation than, you know, than walk away from that and have it turn out to be that this person was now left for the rest of their life, you know, because nobody received what they were trying to say, you know.
It's a very vulnerable moment, and survivors don't need to be interrogated in that vulnerability.
Right. Yeah. So I love that. I know that Saprea has resources on how to be a better receiver in that space. Something that I really would like to dig into a little bit with you, Chris, on the resilient side of things is, you know, how do we forgive? And this is something that's always stood out to me about you specifically, because I think you really spearhead this movement to be in forgiveness as well, right? Like part of being resilient is to have to detach yourself from the actions of somebody else so that you can own your own and move forward. And for you to bring that into such a sensitive and detrimental space, I'm just interested in how it's received by survivors.
Yeah. Forgiveness is a really tricky thing when it comes to child sexual abuse. There's a lot wrapped up in that word. For some people, it is a very academically driven process. Like, how do I forgive? What does the research say? For the other end of the spectrum, it's tied into faith systems and beliefs. And then there's everything in between. So when we say, how do we forgive? I always like to say to people, well, that depends a lot on where you are in the spectrum and what forgiveness means to you. So the first thing I would say in answering your question is, how do survivors give? How do survivors forgive? Or how do we forgive? Is you have to get clear with yourself on what forgiveness means to you.
Thank you for saying that, because it's not just the survivor that has to forgive. It's everybody in that support system, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you.
You got to get really clear with yourself of what forgiveness even is. Like if you base it in some a belief system, maybe a religious tradition, it may mean something different than someone that does not. So get clear on what forgiveness means to you. Regardless of where you're at in that spectrum, there are some overarching principles that are really, really important. And they're going to sound familiar because they were part of our earlier conversation. Acknowledgement is a huge part of forgiveness. And that's where you acknowledge your suffering and the harm that was done to you. It's almost impossible to forgive until you acknowledge the harm that's happened to you. And for survivors of sexual abuse, this is challenging because so many of them make sense of what happened by actually taking on some of the blame, right? And say, well, if I hadn't have done this,
oh my gosh.
Or one of the most common ones, I took one for the team so my sisters didn't have to, right?
Chris, my heart.
Right?
Like,
so these are very, very common.
Wow.
And they're wrapped up in shame. And they're wrapped up in a lot of other emotions, right? So acknowledgement says, I suffered, and I'm going to acknowledge that suffering. Forgiveness truly is about healing, no matter how you view forgiveness. And acknowledgement is that first step in that healing process. From there, we have choices to make. And this is really where a lot of the mindfulness practices come in. And when I say mindfulness practices, they're vast and they're varied.
Sure, yeah.
And I know our listeners have their perception of what mindfulness is, and they might expect me to go into a yoga pose.
I was really hoping for that.
Right? That might be mindfulness for you, and mindfulness for someone else might be something else.
Yeah.
But the key with mindfulness is to, once you've acknowledged your suffering, to be able to observe it as you've acknowledged it, and then make choices on what you're going to do with it.
Yeah. And that speaks to your earlier comment about like, oh, I recognize that I'm numb right now, or that I'm angry and I should just sit with I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then from there, we have what we call aspiration, which is our hope for a better world. Right. So, there's a big forgiveness movement that says forgiveness is for you. It's not for the person that harmed you. That doesn't fit for some people's perception of forgiveness. That might be true for you.
Yeah.
And it's okay if that is. Sure. That's acceptable. But for someone that says, no, forgiveness is actually to release the individual that harmed me from some of that culpability, that may be what they genuinely believe. And that's okay. And we shouldn't box forgiveness into one thought or methodology or point of view. It's more about the practice of acknowledgement as an individual, acknowledging my harm and my suffering, mindfully choosing what to do with it. And then as I take actions on what I choose to do with it, having that aspiration, that hope, that forward-looking view of a better day, that the actions I'm taking will lead to healing. That's what forgiveness looks like.
I love that process. And it's an evolution too. We always hear that, right? Like forgiveness is a journey, but it really, if you take that model and apply that every day, it really is an evolutionary experiment every day on how you show up in that moment, I appreciate that, Chris, so much, because I think, it speaks to the work that we were talking about earlier, which is going into prisons and really applying what Saprea teaches to survivors to the abusers. And this is a very interesting, I think, other side of the coin work, that Saprea is stepping into. And so I'd love to know a little bit about that, because, we talk about resilience for the survivor, for the families, but what Saprea is doing right now is also bringing resilient mechanisms to prisoners. I'm so blown away by this, because it's, they go to prison and you just think, well, that's exactly where you should go. And you should just stay there. And I'm happy that you're there, because you're not out here, And so I love that Saprea is coming into this space and bringing something meaningful. And when we talk about recidivism, you're really applying these principles to actually recidivize and hopefully bring some peace to this space. So I'd love to hear the work that you're doing. So
this is a really interesting topic, and how we approach it, I think, is interesting. So, in the prevention world, they call this tertiary prevention. You have primary, secondary, and tertiary. Right. So this is like talking about how do you break generational cycles, redirect family systems. It's really focused on that. So let me share a statistic with you that is an interesting statistic, and then I need to clear up a myth. So incarcerated women, 66% of them report having been sexually abused as children.
Chris.
Okay, so just grapple with that, right?
Wow.
So they are incarcerated because they've done harm to somebody or something.
Sure.
Right? They've, in their own way, perpetrated or abused. The myth I want to clear up is people who sexually abused weren't always sexually abused. And if you're sexually abused, it doesn't mean you're gonna sexually abuse. But if you're sexually abused and that cycle isn't interrupted with intervention and help, you are at higher risk of falling into behaviors that harm others. May not be sexual abuse, maybe something else. So when we do our work in prisons, we're actually approaching them from the standpoint or point of view as a survivor, not as a perpetrator.
Oh, interesting.
However, we know that they've done harm.
Sure.
Maybe it was sexual abuse. Maybe it was physical abuse. Maybe it was, substance use and a harm on a society or abandonment of a child. Who knows why they're there.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get to some of those roots in their childhood that led to the cascading experiences that put them ultimately in prison systems. So we partnered with an amazing partner that has a learning management system with tablets in prison systems all across the country. Yeah. And we did a 10-module deployment of some of the key healing mechanisms. We are only, as we record this, we are only 5 months into the deployment of that. We've already had over 15,000 women complete at least one of the modules, and over 5,000 women complete all 10.
Wow.
So you talk about scaling, getting to people that are ultra vulnerable. We love what's happening there, and we're excited as we do additional research this year to see if our outcomes are as consistent in the prison system as they are outside.
Yeah. But just the fact that you're doing it, Chris, and the fact that there have been so many people who have completed it, I mean, I think speaks to the need for it, because they're paying attention and they're going through the process, So it's such powerful work that you are doing, and you're global as well. Yeah. Not, as Saprea in general. So you are in France. Where else is
42
Saprea?
countries. I can't name them all. That's our in-person services, meaning that's incredible. Actual people in seats. We've had a little over 30,000 individuals in our first 10 years show up in a Saprea program.
It's amazing.
Between our healing programs and our prevention programs.
Incredible.
When we talk about more the indirect, those that consume online resources, things like that, it's millions. I can't remember the number, but it's I know it's over 10 million.
It's amazing.
That have participated. And in that case, it's reached over 200 countries. So we do English, French, Spanish, and German in terms of languages. So predominantly those areas of the world that use those languages are part of those 42.
Yeah. Just incredible what you guys have done.
Thank you.
Since 2015. I mean, that's crazy. Awesome. Crazy. I want to come back to a comment that I made earlier, Chris, because I'm interested in understanding how you diversify what we in our American culture, in our nation, are doing on this front to educate and bring closer proximity to the issue just within our families, right, themselves. But when we were working together, there was some pretty decent studies on saying, like, in Hispanic cultures, it's pretty common for young women and young men actually to be abused by their uncle or by a family member. And they grow up with this to some degree and thinking it's a normal situation, and so when we're trying to create proximity for a problem that we know exists and is not normal just within our own communities, how does Saprea come into a culture that has really believes that this is just part of their culture and start to awaken some changes, and some realizations? Yeah.
So, this is really, really important and doesn't just apply to Saprea's work. It applies to anybody that's trying to do social good anywhere in the world. And that is the concept of cultural competency. And our approach at Saprea is to acknowledge we do not own the cultural competency over many of these other cultures. So we set up our resources, put it in front of those that do have the cultural competency, and let them decide what of our services make sense and will work. So like in the case, you brought up the Spanish-speaking community. It's interesting. So second generation, those that did not immigrate here, but second generation Latinos, they consume our services in droves.
Yeah.
First generation, it's really hard to get them to engage with our services because of some of those cultural pressures.
Yeah.
So what do? We go to their community, particularly their community leaders, community organizations that have high trust with the community.
Yeah.
Of course, we have some individuals on our staff that are first generation Latinos, right? But we go to those community leaders and let them tell us what the community needs and where to meet them.
Yeah.
For example, with the Spanish language community, we started thinking our retreat was going to be the right place. We piloted a retreat. We tried to pilot a second one. It was just not working.
Happening.
It was not working. So it was like, stop. go back and listen again, pivot, ended up doing our healing workshops. And we've had quite a few, not only last year, but they're continuing this year.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
They're willing to engage with our workshop, particularly if one of their community leaders that they trust recommend it. So that concept of cultural competency is really important, and to recognize that you own your cultural competency. You don't own other people's, and you need to let them determine. And we've made some mistakes. Don't get me wrong.
No,
we've made some mistakes.
But I really appreciate that, because I think in any cultural shift, in any kind of social movement, there's always going to be a natural, resilient journey for that movement as well. It's like you have to go through the things that don't work, and you bank the things that do, and you pull on the things that do to go to the next level, right? And you start that filtration process. And I really, I really appreciate that insight. Thank you. Chris, what is your definition of resilience?
I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't know, because it's evolved. Well, going back to my own story, when I was numbing as a teenager, the way I presented myself to the world is I was extremely well behaved. Like everybody would tell my parents, he is the best. I was the teacher's favorite. I was favorite child, favorite whatever. Right?
I can see that.
Okay. Right? It still comes out.
I can see that.
By the way, I can turn numbing on and off pretty fast.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody on the outside was, as my, parents were struggling in their marriage, they're like, what a resilient kid. He's happy. It was like, that was not resilience.
Yeah.
That was numbing.
Yeah.
Is what was happening.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes we try to define a word like resilience, and we try to describe it. And sometimes what appears as resilience actually can be a coping mechanism for trauma or many other things, right? So, how do I look at resilience? I look at it from 2 points of view. The ability to withstand and recover from hard things is part of it. And then that elasticity principle, like when I get knocked down this far, how far do I come back up?
Yeah.
Those both inform resilience to me. But becoming more personal, to your question, if I tie it back to my story, my resilience was as that would be 1999, a 24-year-old sitting at my grandpa's funeral, for the first time acknowledging something's not right, and making a choice at that point, with the help of an amazing community around me, to say, I'm not going to ignore this. I'm going to do something about it, to learn to recognize my numbing, and eventually to learn to heal from it. And that healing process continues. That's when I think of my own resilience, that's my resilience journey. And those principles of acknowledgement, those principles of learning to let go of things, those principles of, being mindful, they're all components to resilience for me.
I love so much of what you've just said, because to me, I'm following the bouncing ball through all the steps, and I'm thinking this process requires presence.
Yeah.
It requires a really deep amount of focused presence with yourself to understand that there is something off, so that you can acknowledge it. Yeah. So for you, Chris, and for many of survivors that are in the world, how do you become more present with yourself?
For me, personally, and I'll think about the survivor side of it. For me personally, a pivotal point was allowing myself to suffer, and not to discount the pain I'd gone through. Right. Yeah. Because the moment I discounted, what did I do? I immediately numbed again. Right. I went to my coping behaviors that were numbing. Yeah. And that might seem a little counterintuitive, but for me, in order to be present, let me flip-flop that. In order to experience my grief and my suffering, there's no other way to do that than in the present moment. Yeah. And so it brought me to the present to just learn to feel. I had to learn to like deal with how my physical body responded, the knot in the stomach, the lump in the throat, the whatever, those physical right? I had to learn to recognize them, name them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for me, allowing myself to suffer was the biggest tool, and giving myself permission to suffer was the biggest tool that taught me how to live in the present moment.
How did you do that? You know, I think that's the big question, right? It's like we know that that's the logical step, is that we have to allow the thing, right, to come into our space, but actually allowing the thing is a different thing, right? So
yeah, I mean, my fix it man thing's gonna come out right now, right?
You're like, I got some super glue, hammer.
Right, I'm like a lot of men that are fix it people. I'm a fix it person. Right. So the moment I recognized it, I was like, oh, I'm working on this. Yeah,
good for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how do you do that? I don't know how to tell someone else to do that.
No, but for you,
for me, it was pretty intuitive. It's like, let me share one other thing that's interesting, that I think has some relevance. Christy and I think it was when we were still engaged. It may have been right after we got married. We made a decision, and I count that decision a blessing every day. We said, there are amazing things that came from our family, and we're going to identify those, and we're going to take them, and we're going to use them and make them better. And we also said there were crappy things in our families, and we're going to let them go, and we're going to do it different.
Amazing.
So we kind of had that mindset as a couple, and certainly I had as an individual that when I recognize something's wrong, I'm like, I'm going to work on this.
Yeah.
We were joking coming in about getting a little bit older and having to deal with food and
all the things.
Right. That's another, I've been in the last 5 years, I have been slowly changing my eating styles because I recognized my body couldn't handle it anymore. So I'm a longevity guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a quick fix, like you're going to solve this overnight. My numbing or healing, learning to feel again journey is, now almost 30 years in. Right. And I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
So there's many moments where I just sit there and I'm like, I'm frustrated. Okay, what does that feel like? What does that feel like right now? And that's where you learn to sit in your suffering. Some people call it learning to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I won't say like I love to feel anger or fear or sadness.
Right.
There's still hard emotions. But I'm a lot more comfortable just sitting in them. And
because it means progress is coming, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
Than I used to be. And that just is just about kind of taking that acknowledgement, that mindfulness practice. That's how I did it. For survivors, each of their journeys is their own. But those principles that I shared earlier around acknowledgement, mindfulness, and aspiration, those are kind of the base principles that we teach at Saprea to help survivors work through their journey. And they tend to hold true.
Yeah.
The details underneath them, the tactics underneath them change.
Yeah. But the principles.
But they're the core principles.
Yeah. Well, and they're not, and you can use those core principles outside of abuse as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're just solid foundational clinical practices, Chris, I want to say thank you to you and Christy for making that decision in your life, because my parents they both grew up in abusive households, different kinds of abuse, but nonetheless abuse. And when they decided to come together, that was the exact conversation that they had. And because of that, my childhood was enchanted. That's awesome. Literally it was. I had a beautiful childhood because they made that proactive decision to sit in their suffering and filter what worked and what didn't and work through it together. And so I just personally want to acknowledge you and Christy for that work. And on behalf of your kids, like, thank you. I'm sure, for that. And to any survivor who is going to do that and who's taking those proactive steps to pivot and recognize and change the cycle, like, thank you for doing that, because your kids and your family will be grateful to you at some point that
I
you
hope
did.
so.
Yeah.
They say they are,
Yeah.
right? But there's also an interesting thing in that.
Yeah.
With my kids, right? I have zero questions in my mind that my kids had a healthier upbringing
Sure.
than we did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a knock on my parents or my wife's parents.
No, but the goal is always to be a better parent than the parent, right? So, yeah.
At the same time, and it's interesting, I've had these conversations with my kids. They have some stuff too.
Sure.
And guess who did it?
Right.
It was me. It was Christy, right?
Yeah.
They have some stuff, right? And part of this generational change is not only making that decision yourself, but also giving your kids room to say, hey guys, there's some things we call it being the burnt waffle with our oldest. Every family has a burnt waffle. There are things we did as a family, and there are things that just happened that caused you harm.
Yeah.
We're here to back you up when you're ready to deal with those.
Yeah. Oh, I love that though.
Anywhere on your life journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and to your point, I don't think anyone gets out of a family unscathed with something, you know? And so, but the level at which your children experience that scathing
hopefully is
was
less,
a lot less, right?
with each generation.
That's right. And that's a beautiful thing. Whoever can start that process, I'm in deep gratitude to my parents, because they've now pivoted entire generations of children because of that, decision. And so I just wanted to say thank you. And again, to the survivors that are making this choice to work their way through the suffering to resilience.
Yep.
It's so powerful. And I know for anyone that's listening right now, both Chris and I, and all of Saprea and everyone in our community, I hope, is encouraging you to continue the journey and continue exploring and discovering and raising awareness for others who may not be at that point yet.
No question.
So Chris, thank you so much for being here. You're awesome.
Hey, this is a joy.
Yeah.
I love just chatting.
Yes, me too. So we'll have to do it again. Maybe we'll do the Saprea follow-up, and see where you guys are at now. So thank you so much. And I'll make sure that we put saprea.org just in the notes. Is there anything else that we should know about?
I mean, people are welcome to reach out to me. I've recently started doing a lot of writing on Substack.
Okay,
so
awesome.
Some of these topics we've talked about,
okay,
I do a lot
great.
of writing on. That might be a place they want to jump in.
Okay, cool.
Follow me on LinkedIn.
It's Chris Yadon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My last name's unique enough. It's really easy to find me. Spelled Yadon.
Yes.
You'll find me.
Yeah, we'll find you. Okay. Well, Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you being you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Refined Resilience. We hope you found inspiration in the stories shared and the small moments that remind us all of our strength. Remember, resilience is built not just in the big challenges we face, but in the everyday experiences that shape who we are. A special thanks to our sponsor, Build Them Bless, for making Refined Resilience possible. Until next time, remember, it's the small moments of resilience that make us great.